But first to Victoria, where the rights of women have been, dealt another crushing defeat. This morning it was revealed that a lesbian community organisation will be forced to keep its events open to men, straight women and transgender women after the Australian Human Rights Commission refused to grant it an exemption from anti-discrimination laws. The Australian Human Rights Commission even ruled that the word sex is not a biological concept, referring to whether a person at birth had male or female physical traits, nor is it a binary concept, limited to the male or female sex. Sex, it said, can refer to a person being male, female or another non-binary state. It is also broad enough, this is the Human Rights Commission, broad enough to encompass the idea that a person's sex can be changed. Joining me to discuss this, one of our most outspoken pro-women leaders in the Senate, Senator Claire Chandler. Claire, welcome. I saw this story, knew I had to talk to you tonight. What do you make of this decision from the Human Rights Commission?
Well, let's be very frank about it, Peter. It is a terrible decision and just the latest example of what happens when woke left activists take over our bureaucracy and our institutions. If we are in a situation where the Australian Human Rights Commission has, in effect, decoupled the concept of biological reality from the concept of sex, then we can hardly be surprised that women and girls in Australia don't have a guaranteed right to access single-sex sports and single-sex spaces and single-sex services. So a completely mad decision by the AHRC, but sadly something that we have become all too used to seeing.
Yeah, Claire, because just go through this for the people at home too who may not be crossed all the nuances of language. Gender was the term that had allowed a whole lot of various groupings to emerge. I mean, anyone could be anything in gender. But on the issue of sex, it all came down to the science, to chromosomes, to biological reality. Now, if the Human Rights Commission is not just throwing gender up in the air, but it's now throwing biological sex up in the air, we're crossing a Rubicon here. There'll be no guarantees that women can walk into a toilet and just be women in the toilet or women and girls in the change room. I mean, this is a big deal.
Well, that's exactly right, Peter. And I've been on your show many times before talking about why we found ourselves in this situation. And I think particularly when it comes to this new apparent construction of what sex means, according to the AHRC, we only have to look back to the fact that the Sex Discrimination Act no longer defines what a man is and what a woman is. So if you take out those binary concepts from the legislation, well, no wonder you have these crazy interpretations of what sex might be now in 2023. I mean, I think sex is what it always has had the ordinary definition of meaning, but apparently the AHRC doesn't agree.
And the spokeswoman, Carol Ann, for this group, she said it wasn't an unexpected decision. She says it's disgraceful. She says it puts us back in the closet if we ever want to have any events for lesbians who were born female. I guess the challenge with all of this, I mean, what happens now to the right of women to be in a female-only domestic violence shelter?
Well, at the end of the day, they don't have that right in this country, Peter. And I mean, you look at the Sex Discrimination Act itself. I don't think anyone can argue that this piece of legislation that was created for, very genuine and serious reasons is actually serving the rights of women anymore. If being a woman isn't protected under the Sex Discrimination Act, then where else is it going to be? It's an absolutely terrible state of affairs.
Just quickly before we go, Claire, I mean, we're finding overseas, particularly say in the UK, all the politicians, left and right, are falling over themselves to define women as an adult female. They're winding back this stuff. Yet here in Australia, we're going the other way.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, we obviously had a conversation during the federal election last year about what a woman was and the importance of women's sports and women's services. But ever since that election, the Albanese government has shown no interest in changing the legislation that we're talking about here to ensuring that under the law, women and girls have the right to single-sex spaces and services. So, frankly, it's up to the government to take these issues seriously, and I'm not surprised that we're regressing here in Australia under a Labor government.
I know you're going to be firing the Senate about it. Thank you for your time tonight, Claire.